I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and if you watch my Google Nexus 4 full video review, a common question that I got, and yes, I actually do read the YouTube comments as much as I can. Some are pretty funny, some are absurd from time to time, but one that I found particularly interesting was people thought that I gave the Nexus 4 a hard time because it has stock Android, and somebody said, you know what, can you just take the time to explain what you mean when you say skins or user interfaces that run atop Android, things like Sense 4 Plus, TouchWiz, Motorola's UI, LG's UI, things like that. Can you take the time to explain why those are better for the average consumer than stock Android? Here's the reason why. A couple things. First of all, stock Android's not bad, and it's gotten huge improvements over the past couple of months and over the past couple of years. We look at Gingerbread or Froyo versus Jelly Bean right now at stock 4.2, and it's absolutely fantastic. The improvements are night and day. You get some awesome new features, the fonts are refined, things are much more fluid than they were back in the Gingerbread and Froyo days, and it's a great option for a lot of people. It's a great option for developers, and when I say it's a great option, I don't mean it's exclusively for developers. There's inevitably going to be one mainstream consumer that buys a Google Nexus 4, or one developer that buys an iPhone 5, or one developer that buys a Samsung Galaxy S3, or Samsung Galaxy Note 2, or an HTC One X. When I say targeted demographics, what I mean is these are targeted towards that particular group. Again, not to say, people target devices all the time. I worked in retail for years. I worked on the B2B side. I worked in national retail. Let me tell you, wireless carriers, manufacturers, all devices are targeted towards a certain group. And regardless of whether you like it or not, just because I'm not 40 and a female doesn't mean that I can't own the device that's targeted towards 40 and a female, or the person rather that's 40 and a female. For example, Nokia has been very clear on the record saying that they designed the Lumia devices, at least the initial Lumia devices, to appeal to the 25-year-old. Now that doesn't mean that there's not a 60 or a 70-year-old out there that doesn't have a Lumia, or perhaps a 15-year-old that doesn't have a Lumia, or that doesn't have some sort of Nokia device in the Lumia line. What I'm trying to say though, these are targeted demographics. There were devices all the time that came out in retail that, for example, the BlackBerry Pearl Flip, designed towards consumers, marketed primarily towards women because of the size. It was listed actually in quite a few briefs as being marketed towards that particular demographic. I owned a BlackBerry Pearl Flip for a time. Doesn't mean that I'm a woman, but it does mean that I actually like the design of the device. So what I'm trying to get at with Android is when I say target demographics, it's the group that is intended for, the group that's most likely going to benefit from the design or the overall look and feel. And that's how I feel with stock Android. It's got a ton of great options. It's a huge improvement over the original version. That said, it is not designed for mainstream consumers. I still think even at its core, Android 4.2 is too complicated for the average consumer, for the mainstream consumer, for a couple of reasons. One, the Nexus program just does not have the support from carriers. And in the US, we buy our devices from carriers. My mother, my father have no idea what the Google Play Store is. They have no idea how to go online and order the Nexus 4. What they do have an idea of doing is going to Verizon or going to AT&T or going to T-Mobile and buying their device. Unfortunately, with the exception of T-Mobile, there's no Nexus 4s in stock. So you can't go into Verizon and get a Nexus 4. What you're going to be presented with is Samsung options, HTC options, and then of course, and granted there was the Samsung Galaxy Nexus for a period of time at the Verizon store. That said, very much marketed, based on the way our wireless model works in the US, very much marketed to the mainstream early adopter, that person that works with devices on a regular basis that wants to hack and root. Two is the value-added applications that come from Sense and come from TouchWiz and come from Motorola's user interface. Oftentimes, and when I used to advise people on wireless plans and things like that, I used to talk to people that were looking at unlimited data from Sprint. And back in the day, and actually still the case now, even with Sprint's plans, you have the everything data, or simply everything data rather. You can get a basic messaging phone with basic data, or you can get a smartphone with full data. The price plan's the same, but what you're getting on the smartphone is so much more than what you're getting on the messaging device. I used to advise people, I'm like, why not spend the extra money, $199 let's say, for the smartphone and get the data features there as opposed to spending $29.99 on the feature phone and not getting any of the unlimited data. Usually they would agree with me, but every now and again I would get a customer that would buy a basic feature phone and then they wouldn't have the full capabilities when they're paying the exact same amount of money. That's kind of what I'm getting at here with TouchWiz, with Sense. It's much less of a case of people are buying Android. What they're really buying is TouchWiz powered by Android or Sense powered by Android. We're arguably at the point now where Motorola's user interface, LG's user interface, Samsung's user interface, and HTC's user interface are at the point now where they're really their own operating systems that are just operating based on Android. So you're getting ecosystems from HTC, ecosystems from Samsung, and you're getting a lot of value-added applications. There are a million things in all of these different operating systems, these user interfaces, that I think are great for consumers. A physical battery percentage, great for consumers because they can tell what their battery is. Little things that you see on the Samsung Galaxy Note 2, for example, or the Galaxy S3 with TouchWiz. Little things like flipping the device to activate the camera, or palm swiping to capture a screenshot, or smart stay, or rotation prevention, things like that where I'm like, these should have this stock Android. These shouldn't be an issue, and granted, it's a couple of things. One, some of the features just aren't there, and two, some of the features are there in Android, but they're just not marketed. If you know anything about Apple or Samsung or any of the major manufacturers, they'll find something, they'll take a story about it, they'll market it, and they'll create a story. So you look at something like S-Beam with Samsung, for example. Android Beam's been around for a little while, but what Samsung's done is created their own branded solution here as S-Beam. They're marketing it, you see it in their marketing commercials and more, and they're really marketing this as a feature that will appeal to mainstream consumers, combined with kind of a perfect storm of great features and the fact that their devices, for example, are available all across the board. Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and large regional carrier US Cellular has it. You can see that it's a good option for consumers. And you know what? If you're on US Cellular, you can get the device. If you're on Verizon, you can get the device. That's a benefit to Android with skins. And that's really where I see, from a mainstream consumer perspective, why they're successful as opposed to stock Android. Is stock Android bad? Not at all. But I still think at its core, two things. One, you get more value add with the applications and with the things that come from some of the stock, or excuse me, some of the user interfaces as opposed to stock. And two, the way that these carriers brand stuff and the way that they market stuff in America, the Nexus 4 is going to stay on Google, and it's not going to receive as much success because of the platform they're selling it through. Let me know what you think at PhoneDog_Aaron on Twitter, Facebook, Facebook.com/HiAaronBaker, and of course on my personal Twitter page as well at Aaron C. Baker. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts in this debate. I may even do a follow-up video if you're interested at PhoneDog.com. So be sure to stay tuned for that. Let me know what you think. YouTube comments below on the site, on Twitter. I'd absolutely love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.